But I remember falling in love immediately with the idea that someone would just get on the talkback and say, nope, just try it again.
I love that.
With no huge preamble and like...
No sorry.
No. And he would get what he needs.
It's like wah guitar,
Yeah.
greasy, slidey, upright, organ.
Yeah,
I mean,
Welcome back to Professional Musicians React.
we're listening to 2 songs today by one of our favorite people ever, Beck, and we're listening to Deborah and Lost Cause. We're gonna jump right in. Here we go.
Leave you here, wearing your wounds, waving your guns. Somebody new, baby, you're lost, baby, you're lost, baby, you're lost.
Fuck. Oh.
Masterful recording.
Yeah.
So this is from Sea Change.
That's from Sea Change, yeah.
That's Justin Meldal Johnson. He was the musical director and bass player for Beck, is now the musical director for St. Vincent, is a producer and touring musician, has worked with folks like M83, Nine Inch Nails, Paramore, Bird and the Bee, and so many more. Which is like 2001?
Yes, that was a bit later. Then we made Midnight Vultures, and then we made Sea Change, right?
Right.
Mutations, Midnight Vultures, Sea Change.
Sounds like the morning after the party. Like those first records are the party, and this is the morning after.
That's right.
The major 6 chord that happens in the bridge, and there's hints of it before the bridge. You know what I'm talking about?
The
A major 6.
There's a place where you are going.
So the non-diatonic, yes. Yeah, but then it goes to the 4.
Right, it goes...
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, which do you know this band, Here We Go Magic? The use of the major 6 chord is one of my favorite devices, and I hear Nigel do it in different places. The song just it moves along so nicely, and it's such a universe. You know what I mean? Like every time the chorus happens, it's happening early or something.
Yeah, the chorus doesn't, there's not like a marker, and now we're in the chorus. It kind of slides into the chorus.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, we're in the chorus.
Yeah.
It's so simple, and yet you're never bored, and there's so much to look at, and it breathes, and it moves along, and it evolves. It's just like this like living organism.
That's interesting you say that. I feel similarly. There's only 2 things that happen that mark the chorus. There's the Glockenspiel playing FG,
Yeah.
and there's a hint of upright bass in a higher octave.
Baby, you're lost. Baby, you're lost.
That's it.
Yeah.
Nothing else marks it.
And then you wait to the second half of the song to drop the octave and come down, and then it gets
on the
more
bridge,
full.
yeah.
You ain't never been before.
That's right.
Which
yeah.
is beautiful. That's
Yeah,
so
I
good.
remember when we were recording it. I remember not having a plan for that, but I remember I kept waiting, and there were versions of it we did, and I just was like wanting to. I remember sitting there just listening to the guys, and not really thinking about the song. And there was one particular take where I was like, "Oh, I guess I'm going to really come in now."
Yeah.
And that ended up being the master.
That's awesome.
I found myself sort of like hypnotized by what was going down.
Do you remember how many takes you did?
A handful.
Okay.
Maybe
Is that
3,
standard?
4. Yeah.
You do 3 or 4 takes and then overdubs and then mix, and you were kind of song per day.
Yeah, but again, that was the goal with Sea Change, but Sea Change did take longer. Like we would let songs bleed over into multiple days.
What's the loop in the beginning and the end? What's happening?
Vocals,
Okay.
percussion, backwards, flipped. You know?
Yeah.
You hear in the end, you hear Beck say something, Justin something. He says he's giving me some instruction or whatever, and then you hear me sigh at the end.
Let's hear that.
Whatever, yeah.
That's you sighing?
I think so. I think Nigel told me that's what it was. But getting back to your point about
Yeah.
the song, about the thing, the little universe and the flow of it.
Yeah.
I think for me,
Yeah.
what that, and tell me what you guys think, but what a lot of that comes from is the two acoustics, the clav.
Is there a clav in there?
Yeah, it's throughout. It's just percolating along, just that
didn't
eighth
hear the
note,
clav.
that tumbling, flowing thing.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, it's clavs all over it.
Can you play
Yeah.
somewhere in the middle?
Yeah.
Baby,
Oh.
I'm lost.
Wow.
Baby, I'm lost because
Yeah.
That's so cool. Yes.
similar timbre to the acoustics. So
Yeah.
It's almost like doubling the acoustic or just a little extra acoustic
I
juice
love
is what it feels like.
I love hearing an instrument in like a completely different context than
Yeah.
you would expect to hear
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, with no wah-wah pedal.
Well, the idea was to make it sound more like the harpsichord element of clav
Right.
rather than the
Yeah.
the wah-wah slash
Right.
muted, just like open clav.
Right.
That's so
It's
was that
really
whose
beautiful.
idea was that?
Roger.
Sick. He's like, I'm gonna play. Here's his song. He's like, I'm gonna play clav on this one.
Midnight Vultures is one of the best parties of all time.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite records, formative record for me. You know, grew up listening to that record, high school, like just
Wow.
the best. I love that record. And it's such a, you're dancing the whole time and it's silly and it's goofy and it's fun and it's the opposite of Sea Change, right? It's like Midnight Vultures to me feels like, you said it's like the party versus the morning after.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
When Beck played you those songs pre-session in the room for Sea Change, was there any moment at all where you're like, wait a minute, we're at the party. How come we're doing this like acoustic record? Did it feel natural? What was it? Because the world was surprised, right? When Beck dropped Sea Change, it was like
an
we
evolution.
couldn't figure out where did Beck go, but it was such a beautiful record.
Yeah.
Did that happen with the band? Were you all like, yeah, this is a natural progression? What was that moment like where you realized, oh, this is a totally different record than the one we just made?
To be perfectly honest, Midnight Vultures was met with a really wide mix of like derision.
Yeah.
It was a mixed bag.
Yeah.
Depending on where in the world it came out. Like in Japan, it was Beck's hugest record by a factor of 5. It was confounding to people because it was so brash and bonkers and like
Brusque.
we didn't give a fuck. Thank you. It was brusque too. Thank you
Yeah,
for that
you're
word
welcome.
today. And I think that Sea Change came about as almost and then we toured it for 2.5 years. Okay. And then it was time to record another record. And I think Beck needed to step away from the Vultures aesthetic.
Totally.
And not just the aesthetic, but the mindset.
Yeah.
The idea of things being too offhand or pastiche or just weird. you
Yeah.
know? So he wanted to actually like, I want to make a songs album.
Yeah, there's a sincerity about Sea Change. There's like the kid has grown up a little bit. I mean, this sounds like a Johnny Cash song. You know what I mean? It sounds like a later stage Johnny Cash.
That's cool.
It's deep.
Yeah, and it also followed on the heels of a bad breakup that he had. So there was a couple of factors, right, that precipitated it, which is cool. And then the art came, which is
How old are you
natural.
guys for Sea Change?
31, 32. And then talking about Vultures eventually, it took years for Beck to feel vindicated about Vultures. And all of us, because we spent a year on it and went crazy and tried all kinds of stuff and we're experimenting a lot in the studio and whatever, and we loved it. We loved Midnight Vultures. But then people were sort of like, what? And,
Who was like what?
That's
That
the
record
thing.
is the best fucking record ever. I don't know how anybody was upset about that record.
people weren't upset. I just think that people at times were dismissive or didn't understand it, which is fine. It's natural. It's okay. And it took a while to process, not just for Beck and all of us who were helping Beck make the record, but also I think it took a long time for music fans to process it. And starting about 10 years ago, I started, maybe longer, 15 years ago, people started like coming up to me and talking about Vultures. And I was like, wait, what? I thought it was like the lost, forgotten album.
Really?
Yeah, in a way, even though it had some success, it still
It's so
felt a little bit
iconic.
but it felt like a cast off. It felt like an ugly stepchild or like
Yeah.
the the weird relative
Yeah.
in a way. So, but then people started being like, dude, Vultures. Like real heads, like real musicians,
Yeah.
and people I respected and would encounter, and they'd be like the such and such song or whatever. And I was just so like, even for me, just as a player on it, I wasn't
Yeah.
even a writer or a producer. I was just the bass
Yeah.
player and the guitar player and whatever. And I was just, the vindication was immense.
You know, that's a really,
really cool.
interesting kind of arc to hear someone inside that record say that and go through that. I feel like modern music. Okay, so my personal opinion is there are so many great bands right now, and so many great musicians, and so much amazing stuff coming out. And yet, I don't know. I think the feeling that you had about Midnight Vultures is a feeling that a lot of musicians have about the stuff coming out right now, because we're all comparing it to our favorite things from 20 years ago and the legendary shit. And I think we forget that, like, actually there's some legendary shit that is being made today that will be legendary in 20 years. But it's easy to forget that, you know? There's really great shit happening right
just
now.
go to youtube.com/scarypockets. And so when did you meet Beck?
Oh, I met him like, gosh, early 90s on the scene in LA.
And that's you playing bass on that record?
Yeah.
Are you bowing? Is it a upright? Is it a it sounds like
It's
it's
upright,
doubled with it's upright. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, okay, wait, you met him on the scene
Yeah.
at like a show or something?
I don't even remember. He says we met on the sidewalk one time, but we're just like young kids,
How
LA
old were
scene
you?
clubs, like 20, 19. No, gosh, 18 even. And then years later, we just kind of kept in touch. He had this song called Loser.
I'm a loser, baby. So why don't you kill me?
Yeah.
You know, I was doing my own thing. I had my own band. And then...
What was your band?
It was a band called Medicine.
Okay.
This LA band that was sort of like... kind of like a West Coast answer to My Bloody Valentine. Very noisy, but influenced heavily by classic pop like Beach Boys, like very harmony oriented. Yeah, it was cool. I was a fan of that band, but eventually ended up joining that band. And then when that band kind of ended unceremoniously, I was not doing anything, and he asked me if I wanted to come and have a jam. And I sort of like didn't know what that meant.
Wait, was that the framing? Was like, do you
Yeah.
want to come jam with us?
That's exactly what he said.
Did he say, do you want to come have a jam?
No, he said, "Do you want to come down
come
and jam with us?"
And at
That's
that
what
point,
he said.
Loser was out.
Yes.
Odelay was out.
No,
Odelay was not out. Okay,
No.
so this is what, like late 90s?
No, this is 95.
95. Okay.
So we just had Tony Berg
Yeah.
on here,
Yeah.
who signed
That's right.
Beck.
Tony, you signed Beck.
Did.
What was that like to sign Beck?
But he was telling us how Loser was done before, like he heard Loser
That's right.
and then signed Beck. So Loser,
correct.
So Loser
Yeah.
was already done.
Yeah, Loser was done.
And it was big at that point.
Yeah.
And so when he said, "Do you want to come jam?" Did you have any idea that? I mean, it was an audition, I guess. It
was an audition.
It was an audition. Did you know that?
No, it was Beck and Joey Waronker
Fuck.
auditioning
Oh my god!
me and Smokey Hormel. We had many, many years with Beck together. That's Smokey all over that track.
Cool.
And then he went on to also play with Tom Waits and Johnny Cash, and
Wow.
and now we're still recording with him.
What was the jam like when you showed up to play with Beck? What did they say? Did they say like, "Here's a new song we got," and then
Yeah.
like you just had to like figure
Yeah.
out the changes and
Yeah.
find a part? And
Yeah. And so it was basically like it was the moment at this super shitty rehearsal spot that everyone from LA knows called Holly Gully, where we're in this terrible room playing, and it was kind of heavy and portentous because we sounded really good. I could tell we sounded like an
yeah.
ensemble. I could feel it, you know?
I mean,
And since then, like, I guess in a way we got known as the premier like ensemble for Beck.
What was the first record were you on? Was
Well,
it
the first-
Odelay or was it Midnight Vultures?
No, the first record that we all recorded together was Mutations in 1997.
Okay.
And it came out in 98, which was the first thing we did with Nigel Godrich. So,
that was the first time you met him?
yeah. And he had just done OK Computer. And
Which was 96, right? Okay, Computer was
correct,
96.
exactly, right. So we met the Radiohead guys and met Nigel and stuff. We would just meet people, and you're at festivals or shows or whatever, and you're all hanging out. And then Beck and Nigel developed a rapport, and then we decided to make this record. And that ensemble that I was mentioning, myself, Joey Waronker, Beck, Smokey Hormel on guitar, and then pretty soon after, Roger Manning on keyboards.
Wow.
Who's an alumni of Jellyfish.
Yeah.
We got in the studio at what was then known as Ocean Way. It's now United Recording.
Yeah.
And we made this album Mutations together, which was, we sort of developed a format. And the format was, you get in the morning, you review the tune, you get some sounds, you track it, and then you do ensemble overdubs where everybody kind of switches roles and does gets a new instrument or
Cool.
let's do all percussion, let's do all vocals.
And then you did the overdubs at once as a band,
Wow.
like to get the feeling. Interesting.
But on new
always,
instruments.
but yeah, usually.
Like everyone would play percussion, and then
Yeah.
everyone would play
or
keys.
I'd play guitar. Or I'd play
I
there's
love
a
Did you
sound-
end
that.
up throwing a lot of that stuff away? Did you use it all on the record? You
No,
threw
I
it-
don't think we used it.
So it's throwing paint at the wall and then
Yeah.
kind of peeling back and
That's a
finding
good way
the
of putting
nuggets.
it.
That's
Yeah,
such a
that's-
cool way to make magic accidents.
And then Beck, late afternoon, Beck would do the vocal. And then we would have dinner and Nigel would start the mix. And then in the evening, we'd do sort of an all hands mix where Nigel would be sort of the director, if you will. And we'd all have moves.
That sounds so fun. That sounds like the best fucking day in the world.
And it
It's a good
sounds
day.
like those records. Those records sound like a party or a bunch of kids fucking around. And
It does. I agree. Yeah. And Mutations was made very much that way. Sea Change slightly less so. Like
How
it's a
much of
little
that-
slower, but that was still the same ethos, same process, same room, same people, same everything. Anyway.
Was the vibe, was that like day constructed, like was it intentionally fun and low key, and do you know what I mean, like was it set up like that, or did you guys stumble into that process where it was like, this is fun and we're having a nice time and so we're making music together and it sounds like that?
I don't think we were that self-aware. I don't even think Beck and Nigel had a mindset where let's do it this way because this will inspire and be
Right.
fun. I
Right.
think it was like, here's how many days we have booked. And we got to get these songs.
How many days
done.
did you have booked?
I think we did the whole album in 16 days.
What was the relationship like between Beck and Nigel? Were they good collaborators? What
Yeah.
what was the kind of collaboration like? How was Nigel like working with Beck? Or I guess what is your what were you able to glean from that as a 20-year-old?
Nigel and Beck had an incredible instantaneous rapport that really manifested in ideas springing up fast. And Nigel came from a school of recording that is decidedly like organic and fast and reliant on great playing. Like that's what he was expecting. And, you know, Nigel, we were all the same age. Nigel's just like 1 year younger than all of us. Like, so he was 27, we were all 20, or he was 26, we were all 27.
Oh my god.
when you say he came from that,
Yeah.
what do you mean?
Like his days at like being an engineer in London and stuff.
Okay, so that's how he came up.
Yeah, he came up just like working the tape and having great players.
Engineers
bang
in
it out.
London with like studio musicians.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Or in bands, like working with bands.
I didn't realize he was that young. That's
Yeah, Nigel's 1 year younger than all of us. Yeah.
okay.
Time was an important factor. And the idea that like, well, why should we spend more time on this? Let's just get an idea and put it down. And so there was no like design.
Wait, what do you
know-
mean time was an important factor?
We only had 16 days in
we
the
had-
studio.
Or whatever. We had like 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks or whatever we had at Ocean Way booked. I mean, it was really tight. By the time we finished the last song, the second of the last song, Nigel had to get on a plane. And so the last song of the album, I mixed it with the assistant. And Nigel had to actually leave. So I mixed the last song with the assistant and back, and then the album was done.
You said Nigel expected great playing.
Yeah,
Was there
for sure.
was there pressure when you were tracking to tape? Did it feel, and was it tracked to tape or was it was on tape?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Was there pressure? Did it like how did his expectation of great playing, I guess, affect your performance?
I don't know. I mean, what I had already had a decent amount of experience in studios, and we were essentially a pretty shit hot live band. I think that after the 2 years plus of touring the Odelay album worldwide, like we were great. We knew
Yeah.
we could pull it off really easily.
And what made you so good? Was it that you were locked in with each other? Was that you knew each other's vocabulary? Your
All of it.
time was good together? Everything.
Very much.
Yeah.
You know, and like we were learning from each other. Everyone was bringing in disparate influences. We would absorb them and try and figure out ways to make them our own. Like, you know, Beck was obsessed with Brazilian tropicalia music, and Smokey was turning us on to like really cool, like old rockabilly and country. And everyone had things to bring to the table, and we would all just sort of assimilate. And
Smokey was into the rockabilly and country because I hear that in Beck's music. I hear, right? There's obviously so much of that.
I thought you knew this. You handed me a canceled check.
The banjo and the slide and the pedal steel and all that stuff.
That's kind of the Smokey and Beck axis. Both of them have that really deep affinity for like classic, kind of heartbreaking,
Yep.
you know, country and stuff like that.
What
Anyway,
what was pre-production like before you guys started recording? Like you said, you got there and you'd learn the song. Were there like did Nigel and Beck do pre-production?
there was no pre-production.
So did Beck have all the songs written already?
We went to Beck's house and I set up like a room with an engineer buddy where we all jammed for a few days to like get kind of
On the
familiar.
songs?
On the songs. And then
Beck. So during that time, Beck would show you the song
Yeah.
on a guitar.
Yeah.
You guys would play it, and so you'd have some iteration.
yeah, but it wasn't like it wasn't like we didn't have a direction. There was not like an aesthetic yet or anything. It was more like the meat and potatoes of like the shape of the song and
The changes.
the changes and
So you
all
had
that.
that for every song.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think
But all the songs were done before. Like Beck wasn't writing songs in the studio.
He was.
He was. Okay.
They were not
All
complete.
done.
They weren't totally complete. There was
Yeah.
a lot of stuff happening at the mic stand on a piece of paper on the fly. Like there was a lot of that. It was really inspired. I do have to say, I'm not trying to sound immodest about it, but the whole process was really inspired, and it emanated from Beck and Nigel.
Anytime I hear something that I deeply resonate with, I'm like, is this Nigel?
Yeah.
Because he's just got the thing.
We had lunch recently, and he said to me, like, because I've segued into producing pretty heavily over the past like 12, 13 years, and he said to me, producing is really hard.
Yeah.
And I have to just
I love
it.
that.
I have to.
I love hearing Nigel say that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
He says it. He's very plain about it. He's not a pretentious person. He's a very plain speaker who really like just lays it out to you like, this is hard work.
Yeah.
Does he does he lay it out to you in the studio too? Is he like super honest and
Yeah.
like candid? Like what's an example like something that he said in the studio that was like maybe, you know, more honest than you were expecting, or like a moment, or like how does that manifest in the studio, I guess?
I don't remember specifics, but I remember falling in love immediately with the idea that someone just get on the talkback and say, nope, just try it again. With
I love that.
With no huge preamble and like
No sorry.
No.
Just no.
I
Do it
love
again.
that.
just no pandering to just no, that wasn't it. You guys try it again. Let's count it in a little faster or whatever, just something.
Yeah.
And he would get what he needs, and then he'd
Yeah.
whatever. And
Yeah.
then maybe he'd do some edits on tape, and he'd have it. And
Yeah.
it'd be fast.
There's one of my favorite books is Songwriters on Songwriting. Do you know this book?
I don't. Yeah.
Paul Zolo.
It's a great book.
You know that book?
Yeah.
And it's just like interviews with all of the greatest songwriters ever. And it's so cool to hear Bob Dylan talk about how hard songwriting is, or Paul Simon talk about how hard. There's this illusion of greatness that it just like
Where this somehow
happens.
manifests.
It's
but
Olympic fucking athletes. You see them doing the rings, and you're like, that looks easy.
Yeah.
And it's listening to a great producer is the same kind of thing. You listen to it, it feels effortless there's so much.
So it's
Yeah.
so fucking hard.
It's super not effortless.
And all these motherfuckers have batting averages. You know what I mean?
I do.
Even the great like Barry Bonds, whatever, still, 7 out of 10. He's
That's
not
right.
hitting.
That's right.
And the greatest songwriters are the same way. You just don't see the misses.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that just for Nigel at this stage in his career, he's trying to make it so that when he does produce something, it's going to count, and he knows going in that it has not only an opportunity, whatever. For how I don't know how he regards this specifically, but like an opportunity for success, but also like he sees that he's going to be simpatico with the people involved, and he's going to be able to exert some sort of mandate to get it done. And there'll be some accord about how it's supposed to be done and how it's supposed to sound and stuff like
Yeah.
that, and that he likes the people he's in the room with. And so I mean, to be perfectly honest, like I've modeled my production career very much off the same like set of principles. Like, do we like each other?
Yes.
Can we be in a room for a while?
Yes.
Can
I mean, that
you know,
hasn't
like-
stopped Jack and I from working together.
It's impressive.
Wait, can we go back to this session for a sec? Actually, sorry, finish your principles because I'm curious what those. It's like, do we like each other? Can we be in a room for each other? Can we get on a bus together for 6 weeks?
Yeah,
Like, what are
all
the
that
other?
stuff. I don't know. It's just like, you know, are you deeply honest with yourself that this music does not suck? And now we can produce a record together. You know, those are so I do the same thing. you
Yeah.
know? And I at the risk of sounding really highfalutin and pretentious, there are times when I drive my manager crazy because he's like, "You have an opportunity here to make a record with so and so," and I just don't get why you're saying no to this. And I'm like, well, it's because something's off and I'm not meant to be there.
Those moments, I think, are almost more important than what you say yes to. Can we go back to that the days in the studio? I'm just
Yeah.
curious about the actual setup, the recording setup in the
Yeah.
studio. Are you guys in ISO booths? Are you out in the room together?
We're out in the room, yeah.
You're out in the room together.
Yeah.
And are you wearing headphones? Are you tracking? So everybody's wearing headphones. And how many people are in the room? The whole band?
Yeah, it's a whole band.
And is Beck tracking with you guys playing acoustic guitar?
Yeah, or electric, but yeah.
Okay. And are you recording in the room? Are you picking up the room sound, or are the amps in ISO booths?
The amps are sequestered in like little dog houses and stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's no like amp bleed per se. That's really it's negligible. But yeah, it's there's bleed. There's
And
stuff
it's in the
happening.
room. Yeah.
It's
Okay.
in the room,
And are
yeah.
you guys literally recording close to each other, or are you sort of spread out like you would be on stage?
kind of spread out, but in a giant circle? It's a big room. It's sort of like
Oh, so you're in a circle. So you're all looking at each other.
yeah.
But
generally.
maybe 10 feet away or 15 feet away.
Yeah, something like that. And then Joey, the drummer, is either in the room or pretty shortly, especially during this album, we're talking about Mutations. He started going in this really tiny ISO next to the control room that's like that small, half that,
Yeah.
tiny.
Yeah.
And just because it was it gives us that snare.
Right.
It gives us that. Doosh,
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, okay, there it is.
Yeah.
And
love
so
that.
we achieved that. I think, God, maybe someone can correct me, but I thought maybe halfway through Mutations that's where we ended up having Joey live, and even more recently when we've been recording, we do the same thing. So.
That's so cool.
When did you start recording? Do you remember when the days began in the morning? Were they early mornings? Did you guys start at noon? Were you up all night? Like what was the actual timing like?
For these albums that we're talking about, particularly Mutations and Sea Change, I think that we were like in at 10, coffee, start getting the tune together, lunch, track the tune, overdubs on the tune, vocals on it, dinner, let's mix. 10 to 10 or midnight. Nothing super crazy.
Yeah.
12, 14-hour days.
It's such a band vibe.
It's a band vibe.
It's a band.
Beck really enjoys having the guys, you
Yeah.
know, because he does have a certain amount of trust in what we do for him. It's been so many records.
Yeah.
And that's a good bridge. Let's listen to Deborah.
Let's listen to Deborah.
Here we go. Deborah from Midnight Vultures.
Fucking iconic.
Is that Smokey?
Yeah.
That bass line is so good.
Get it, Justin.
Oh, just
Wow. That's just one of the greatest recordings ever. I love that
Ever.
so much.
your bass line is so iconic. That slidey thing. You're of course it's upright, right? You're
It's
on a
upright,
big
but-
nasty upright.
Yeah, but full disclosure, especially for the people at home, that's not entirely my bass line. That's based on a sample, which is how we originally rendered the song. Yeah, that's me sort of copying the sample and then evolving it.
How did it start and how did it evolve?
Okay, so Deborah was recorded for Odelay
Okay.
initially and never landed on the record. Beck thought like it's too goofy or like whatever. But then so it never was released, but then we throw it in the show and we developed this whole like bonkers, sexy preacher man, vamping like thing where every night this song would be different. It would go on sometimes for 10 minutes, like with him, like walking off the, like doing a whole shtick, or like, you know, eventually during the Midnight Vultures, there'd be a giant bed that came down from the ceiling with silk sheets, and he'd go up in there with the background singers and like get raised up into the, like all kinds of crazy shit happened with the evolution of that song. But it was like a live show staple, and the fans really responded to it. So Beck got the idea that after the Odelay tour, like, wow, we gotta like cut Deborah the way this band plays it. Because originally it started with like us like kicking this loop, and we'd play on top of a loop. Okay, and then like he was like, well, let's get the guys in, and this is with the producers at the time, the Dust Brothers, and we basically went over to their house. They had a house in Silver Lake where they'd converted into sort of a makeshift studio, and we just jammed the song, and Beck did a scratch vocal, I think, in the other room, but we all played, and we added, so that's the same band, but we added Money Mark on keys as well. So I can't remember if he's playing the Whirly or the B3, but Roger and he did it together, and it was a live recording.
It's like you guys all just grabbed instruments that made you think of sex and played the song. It's like wah guitar,
Yeah.
greasy, slidey
bass.
upright,
Yeah,
organ.
yeah. All
I
that
mean,
shit.
you know, the horn stab.
Did you know when you were
Love thinking
playing?
about sex.
Yeah, I can tell.
Well, all I was going to say is like all those things, those elements, creating that sleazy vibe, you know,
Yeah.
whatever. It's just a send up, you know. It's a send up that ended up being pretty earnest. Like in other words,
Yes.
it started off super pastiche and funny and like ridiculous, but we play it like we mean it, and
Yes.
Beck sings it like he means it. And the fact of the matter is, he's like doing this whole like, you know, Prince JB's like freak out vocal, but the thing is he sings the shit out of it.
It is earnest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so.
That's what makes it so good.
It's not a joke.
No, it's not
Yeah.
a joke anymore. Maybe it's like when we started it, we're kind of like giggling about it or whatever. But we were like, "This is fucking dope. This is badass. Let's do it."
So
Yes.
okay, so I want to talk about the humor for a second, because this has that thing that I think a lot of Daft Punk songs have, where you can't tell how serious they are about it.
I love that.
Like and I'm like, I'm literally wondering, when he's singing that vocal in the studio, are you guys cracking up? Are you laughing? Is it fun? Is it silly? Or is it like we're doing this song and it's earnest and it's real?
No, you had to have been focused.
We were focused, but
Yeah.
the thing is that it was born from playing it on tour.
Right.
This song came from touring,
Which was wild and ridiculous and funny and lines going crazy.
And with Beck, the beautiful thing about Beck and the band is that Beck is always actually has it in mind, like, how do I fuck these guys up? And he wants to like always spice up tonight's rendering with some new lines about the town we're in, or about this girl in the front row, or like
He's
some
kind of
random
playing
shit.
for you guys. You guys are
That's
playing
right.
for each other.
and we're doing it for each other.
Question about touring and recording, and you've mentioned a couple times now, that's how we did it on tour. We found the magic on tour, we found the chemistry on tour, then we took it into the studio, we played it, and we had that chemistry as a band. So many musicians don't approach it that way.
No.
The folks they tour with are one band, and then they record with their other band, and
Yeah.
and this has a friendship about the way it feels and sounds. It has a heart and a beauty and a kindness about it. Maybe I'm hearing those things now that you've told me about those things, but it feels like friends chilling, having a great time together. And that is so different than how it's approached a lot of the time. I guess, why is Beck doing it this way and not the other way? And I guess, what do you think about the way that it kind of happens where you know the touring band and the live band are different bands?
I think that sometimes there's an opportunity with certain artists where they open a door for the innate character of people and all their weirdness and all their heart and all their taste to come forward. And that takes like trust, and it takes generosity to do that. And some artists are not necessarily in the mindset to be that open. I don't, you know, because of maybe the way they feel about control, or maybe they feel, I mean, frankly, I think a lot of it has to do with like, well, who's the ensemble? Like, have you developed like that kind of rapport that actually makes that kind of thing? Because isn't that the thing that would open that door? Like, are you guys like bonding
Yeah.
over years of grinding and like playing a festival in England to 60,000 people in the mud at Glastonbury before the Prodigy goes on, and like you're like doing your weirdo funk like band punk, LA guys.
Yeah.
And you just like you bond over moments like that, and then you also inform each other musically, and your musicianship each. I know I rose to the occasion. I grew a lot as a musician playing with all those guys. And so my point being, I'm circling back to kind of answering your question, is that I think it takes that trust happens when the ensemble actually delivers the goods, where they have ideas and they have taste and they have things that they bring, because like some people just have touring bands, and maybe they're just more utilitarian sometimes they're not.
Yeah. Also,
You've seen it before.
Yeah.
A million times.
when a lot of times when that happens, when they say, okay, thanks for the tour, guys, we're going to go use this is
A-listers or whatever.
This is the guys on this record are the people that those producers call. They call Joey and they call you. It's
Right.
like, this is the band. And I think there probably are times when that happens unnecessarily, but I think I would guess that a lot of the reason that happens is just because producers have relationships with people.
Yeah.
And they want to work with their people because they know their influences, they have the rapport, there's an unspoken thing. If like a producer was working with a new artist and they have a touring band and they have the option of like getting their people,
They're
on it.
ringers or whatever you call it.
It's like there would have to be something really special happening in this touring band, not to go with the thing that you already know how to use.
Totally. And yeah, I'm not disparaging one way or the other. I totally understand the reasons for choosing one path or another path. Makes total sense. I guess what I'm calling out is like, if you can find this magic with a band, there's an element like Beck's ability to be himself in these records. I think, I don't know if it can only come from being surrounded by people that you trust and being in a recording studio with people where you just feel 100% okay with being 100% of who you are.
Yeah.
But one of the things that is so sexy about these records for me and so appealing and something that draws me to him as an artist is I feel like I am listening to a person being himself completely.
With all his friends.
With his friends.
Yeah.
And that's magic that is very hard to get with a group of people that you're a little bit uncomfortable with or that you just met for the first time. Like that is such a special thing for an artist to be able to do and have. And you guys all sound like it. It comes out in the rest of the playing too.
I think that it's hard to do in a contrived way. And those things are circumstantial or accidental when they do happen historically.
Yeah.
Like the best bands that James Brand had.
Yeah.
And the best bands that Prince had. And I'm not even talking about like artists like that, like all kinds of artists.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they're not like engineered with all kinds of like, there's no
there are
like
moments
Sven
that
Gali
happened.
in the background going like, okay, so if we get this guy, he'll bring this certain like this thing, and then that's like jive. That's like things don't work that way. That's not how music works.
Totally. I wanted to just talk real quick about one last thing. This mix is real interesting in that the drums are quiet. The guitar is loud as fuck. The fact that the drums are quiet and the guitar is doing the 70s like wah thing, just blazing, guns are blazing the whole time, is like part of why this record and these records that you guys made feel so timeless, because it's like, how are they using some samples? Are they like the fact that you guys were sort of playing your version of a sample kind of explains part of it.
It does.
But the mix also helps, and I don't know, it's such a vibe.
It's crusty too. Like that was recorded real quick with not a lot of like, spending hours getting sounds. It was like, oh, we're all here. Let's throw this shit up and go.
Yeah.
Like no one had the patience. It was just like, we're all hanging out. All right, is that mic on? Okay, cool. It's when shit's like that. Sometimes, again, speaking to your happy accidents thing, that obviously applies to the sonic domain as well.
Yeah.
And like, I think the mix wasn't really overthought.
Right. Was it done in the day? On the days? Okay.
That was done later. Yeah.
I want to do a shout out to the PMR community out there on YouTube. Dion Reed is asking a question. If you had to choose one Beck album production style for him to have to stick to from here on out, which would it be?
If I could get another Midnight Vultures, I would die a happy man. I'll just say that. I mean, I know it was a moment in time, but like that record, I'll listen to that record until I die.
For me, it's The Information, which is like become the modern day like Lost Stepchild album of Beck's, which is the last time he and Nigel worked together, and that album is fucking bonkers.
Cool.
It's my absolute favorite Beck album.
The Information.
Yeah.
Think I'm in love, but it makes you kinda nervous to say so.
What's a song, any song that you've been listening to recently that you really dig?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh.
All of us. We all got to answer.
Okay,
Any
we all gotta
song
answer.
that you've been listening to, just for folks to get a little modern music rec or old music rec, whatever. Some song you've been listening to that you want people to know about.
I tend to listen to music in like periods of time. Right now I'm in the late 70s and I'm in the post-punk era of the late 70s. So I'm really obsessed with Devo, generally speaking, but I'm particularly obsessed with Devo almost as a cause because they didn't get in the Rock Hall of Fame again this year. They were nominated. They're always nominated.
Can't get no satisfaction. I can't get me no satisfaction.
Mine is a song Jack Stratton just sent me called Loretta by Ginger Root.
I want to make sure I'm saying the band's name right. I've listened to this. Is one of those albums that I just keep listening to because it's so nice to listen to. One of those records. Sasek, S-A-S-A-C. Sasek is the name of the artist. The song is called Pig. The album's Future Disc. And it's like 80s throwback instrumental. All right, Justin, time for the signing of Wall Simon.
What an honor. Thanks.
Everyone
wouldn't
who
mind.
signed this, their career has just gone on to explode. You can Google some of these names.
Oh my God, I'm so
and you're
stoked
about to
on
join the ranks, so.
Well, thank you for
Thank you
joining
so
us
much
today.
for doing this,
Pleasure.
man. This was so fun.
Fun for me.
Thank you guys for watching. If you like what you've seen here, you can like and subscribe and comment below. Let us know what we got wrong in the comments, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody.